So you're asking about Satipatthana. Um, let's start with from the very beginning of where the idea, the concept came from. The concept came from um, the old ancient way of looking at the world in the sense of elements. Now, modern
Mhm.
chemistry, we have more than 92 plus everything that they can build at CERN, which I think there's another dozen or so. So there's over 100 different elements now. All right. But in the time of the Buddha, they looked at things in the sense of four elements. Now, actually, they were looking at it in a different way than what we would normally see. So we can, if you look at water, you can see, in fact, that water goes into all of the various elemental stages.
It goes into, yeah, it's like kind of a middle ground.
Well, no, no, it depends upon the temperature. In
Oh
other
yeah.
words, water can be solid, it can be earth like. That, in
Hmm.
fact, it's very, very hard to find the South Pole or, let us say, Antarctica because of all of the snow on top of it.
Hmm.
It's really hard to actually find the real place because there's so much solid ice on top, right? So that's one way of looking at it. Things that are solid and then things that are liquid. When you heat water up a bit, it becomes liquid. And most of the water on the planet Earth is in liquid form.
Hmm.
But if you heat it up more, like the sunshine on the surface of the ocean, will create um, a gas so that we have uh, molecules of water in the air. And that the hotter the air is, the more molecules of water it can hold. And that's why when it gets cold, it generally rains. The water will fall back out of the air when it's hot. Now, when you get water very, very, very hot, then it's under pressure, it's under steam, and in fact, in physics, we call that fourth state of matter plasma. And plasma is when not only are the molecules shaking against each other, but they're shaking against each other with so much energy that, in fact, they rip each other apart.
And
And
that's
so,
from water to air, where there's like
to,
that intermediary where
and
it's
then
bouncing together really hard.
no, no, the air or the gas would be like clouds in the air, for
Oh, okay.
instance,
Mm.
as opposed to what we could also think of, but we're only thinking about it as pressurized steam, to where there is an actual fourth state of matter. And that fourth state of matter is called plasma that I'm speaking at, that has so much energy. You see, when it's solid, there's very little. When it's
Hmm.
liquid, there's some. When it's a gas, there's a lot. But when there's really a lot, then it goes into a plasma state. And that
Oh,
plasma
okay.
state is when it actually breaks down and it's not water anymore.
Hmm.
But if you take that heat away from it, it will go back and combine and become what we know as water.
Hmm.
All right. So these are the four states of matter that the ancients had, and they called it earth, water, fire, and air. With the
Hmm.
fire being the plasma part, and the air is like the water that's in the cloud.
Okay.
Okay, and they would actually look at fire as a fourth element because it's different than all the other elements. And then the philosophers come in and start adding other things like consciousness and space. And so now altogether they've got six
Okay.
elements.
So when I when I'd read that before and heard people talk about it, so like yeah, you have the four elements, and then it'd be like fire would be kind of a heat. You would have there would be like a heat element associated with it.
Mhm.
Air would be like spaciousness, like fast moving, like kind of what you're talking about, I think. Is
Right,
is
like
there
the
still like
clouds
that
in
with
the air,
fire? Is
they're
there still
very
that like
temporary.
heat? Okay.
Well, okay, let us put it this way. Solid means that it's fixed and doesn't move much.
Yeah,
And it's
like the
very
earth is
hard to
like,
move mountains, right? So it's
yeah,
very
like your
hard,
bones in your body, like it's solid, it's there, like it's not moving.
right? And our emotions are fluid like water in the sense that it is always seeking its lowest level. You know,
Hmm.
that's the property of water is that water seeks its own level.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, the same thing is true with emotions, which means that when emotions are seeking their own level, they're generally at a pretty low level.
When the emotions are, so that's going to be like a really solid feeling,
Well, no. What I
or
mean by that is that our though the body changes very slowly, our feelings change so that we can be angry, but we're not angry all the time like the body is the body all day long. That when
hmm
we go to sleep, we're not angry, but when we wake up, we can wake up angry again, and then we can be angry for 3 or 4 days, and then we're not angry anymore.
yeah.
Okay. As opposed then to the third element, which is normally referred to as fire, and the fire is actually the mind, the ability to put things together and tear things apart. That's the critical mind. It's very destructive. It
Hmm.
consumes.
Yeah.
And it depends upon which state of mind that you're in. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then we can think of the thoughts as like clouds in the air. They go by very fast. Every
Hmm.
mind moment is a new breeze.
Before we get too deep into that, I thought so. If I look at the Satipatthana Sutta, there's before you start looking at the elements, you look at the repulsive, and then before that, posture, and then before posture, I don't know, something else, and then you get down to like just focusing on the breath. Um, or does that like particularly
Where did
matter,
you
or is
get
like all
that?
this stuff going on at the same time? So it's not, oh, so it's not like a sequence of things you're supposed to do. This is kind of just like a general approach.
The Buddha has a sutta uh, that is called one by one as they occur.
Mm,
And we're talking about it like that. And a lot of people, when they hear that phrase one by one as they occur, means that they're going to occur in a particular sequence.
okay,
But if you really look at it as one by one as they occur, means that it can occur at any time. Whichever one comes up, that's what we're looking at.
that makes sense. Yeah, it's not necessarily.
So it's not
Yeah, it's not
particularly in any
worded.
order. It's just every. I mean, and the world is random. Things just come up and go, and come and go, and come and go.
Okay, so
On
it's not
their
like you sit down, focus on breath. It's like, well, you just deal with what's coming up, or like you.
according to the
Yeah.
level of mindfulness that we have
Oh
is
wow.
what
Okay,
comes up.
that makes
Hmm.
a lot of sense.
All
It
right.
takes a lot of time to
So,
get through all the steps. Yeah.
and once we understand it, it all fits right together. It's just got
Yeah, I'm sure.
one thing.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks for clarifying
So,
that.
all right. So, with the idea then of the four elements, the Buddha takes this as four natural elements. In fact, um, it could not happen any other way, but you can imagine that the way that it did happen is that the Buddha wanted to describe the Dhamma to people, but he had to have a frame of reference.
Hmm.
Okay, well, everybody in those days had the frame of reference of the four the four elements.
Yeah.
That was the way everybody thought then. Now that we go to chemistry class in high school, we don't think about it like that anymore.
Yeah, the elements don't line up with how we talk anymore, at
Right,
least. Yeah.
exactly. We don't line things up in these four ways of fire, air, water, and solid.
Mm.
But this is the way that people thought about it in that time. And so naturally, the Buddha used that as a frame of reference of the four elements. And so this is, he calls it then the four foundations, which is an element. I mean, the elements are the foundational stuff.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, and that an example then of molecules is always a combination of elements.
Hmm.
For instance, water is the combination of oxygen and hydrogen,
Okay.
and carbon dioxide is the combination of carbon, one carbon element, and two oxygen.
So these will be the building blocks for things later on?
Right. Okay. So this why we call it the foundation, or the building blocks. In fact, is exactly right.
Mm.
That's why in the oldest buildings long ago, the biggest stones were the ones on the foundation stones.
Mm.
But that's also true when they build big skyscrapers today, is they
Hmm.
dig down and then they put these huge pylons in as the foundation.
Mm.
Okay, so the foundation then for everything are the elements. And in the time of the Buddha, the four elements was all they knew. So the foundations of everything then are these four foundations. And the Buddha says, okay, well, we're now, instead of having them as just merely the four foundations of all existence, we're going to start using these four foundations as objects of mindfulness. We're going to start looking at them.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's the whole idea then behind it is that our objects of meditation now become, let us say, categorized in these four ways.
Yeah.
So that now we're going to start doing anapanasati with the element of the body. And that's the first part of the Anapanasati Sutta and also the first part of the Satipatthana Sutta.
Hmm.
Okay. And so the body and the way that the body, the Buddha talks about the body is number one, we need to start breathing better. That's why the long in breath is number one on his list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then step number two is a shorter breath, but it is intentionally short rather than a shallow, deep, or let us say a shallow, ordinary breath. That the short breath is intentionally to get your energy up.
Yeah. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. So you have
Okay.
that hard. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So the next item on the list then is to experience or to know the body, to understand the body. And that we do that through the breathing, that we come to know the body. We want to make it tingly alive. And then the fourth item on that list is that we want the body to be completely relaxed.
Hmm.
You see, this is the part that most Western meditators are missing, is they think that to them meditation is sitting on the floor in a meditation hall, cross-legged with their back straight, and doing all of the things that they have in all of the rules,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Definitely.
The Buddha uses one word for that, and that is relaxed.
Relaxed.
Relaxed. That's the intention of anapanasati is to relax the body, to become at ease, to become easygoing, and that all of the analogies have to do with that, have to do with stopping the work and
Stopping the
relax.
work.
Stopping the work, okay? An example of that is the holy life is lived, pure as a polished shell. The work that had to be done has been done. Now, a lot of
Yeah.
people will think about that work that needed to be done has been done, means that I've sat in the meditation hall for year after year. I've been a monk for years, and I've finally put in all the work that's needed, and now I'm finally enlightened, and so finally the work is done. Right? That's the
Yeah.
way most people think because that's the Western style, the Western mindset. In our regard, it is so the work right now has been done. Now, all we need to do is to remove the hindrance from the mind, and all the work that needed to be done has been done. That's one's right effort. One's
It's like,
right effort is in fact very little effort. All we have to do is to remove our critical thinking, remove critical thoughts, to remove unwholesome thoughts is all we have to do. And to now, the work that needed to be done has been done.
it's like last week when I asked you, how do I fix my sukha? And it's not that like there's any trick to learn. It's just that the work, like the mindset is like the work has been done. Like you were successful.
Right.
That's the mindset you need to be in.
Right. That's the right mindset, or we call it right attitude.
Right
The
attitude,
right
yeah.
attitude is that the work that needed to be done has just been done.
Yeah, because I'm applying a lot of effort if I'm trying to fix those hindrances or like solve the problem. And it's kind of like the opposite. Well, it's the learning
Right.
to not apply the effort.
Okay. So let us say that you can walk into the room and you can see a big mess on the floor. And you can say, okay, I need to clean up that mess. And I cannot feel good and feel happy until I clean that mess. So I get in there and I start cleaning up all of that mess.
Mm-hmm.
And after I cleaned up the mess, now I can relax and feel good. The job has been done. But there's
Mm-hmm.
another way of doing it. And that is you walk in the room, you see a big mess on the floor, and you say, oh, I don't need that. And you close the door and you walk away.
Yeah.
I don't need that mess. I don't have to clean up that mess. I could just forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
That and the time to forget about that mess is in that time when we are in fact deeply involved in cleaning up that mess. And we can just say, wait a minute, I don't have to do this right now.
Yeah.
I
So,
can
well,
leave that job undone. And in fact, the completion of the job is leaving it undone. And just say, I don't need to do that.
yeah. Yeah. Like, so the Westerners, like, we want to sit down and meditate and, like, kind of apply the rules, go through the steps and fix the problems. But it's a different attitude that
It's
we,
a different attitude. And
yeah.
the new attitude is, hey, there's no rules, there's no place to go, there's nothing to do. The
Yeah,
job
it's
that needed to
fine.
be done has been done. Let's sit down and relax and nourish ourselves. My, what a good boy am I. I've done the
Yeah.
job that I needed to do. I have come out of my critical thinking.
And that attitude lets you observe the like elements that we're talking about.
Hmm. That means that everything that you do then is a joy, a toy to play with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's give an example of that you're, say, for some reason or another, you're involved in a lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
People who are involved in a lawsuit, and I'm talking about everybody, lawyers on both sides, judges, witnesses, and especially the defendant and the prosecuting party,
Mm-hmm.
all are mentally uh, absorbed with that court case. And very few of them, no one, in fact, in that court case, of all of the, let us say, three, four to five, maybe six people involved with that court case, none of them feel like, while that court case is happening, that they're okay. They're waiting for the outcome of the case before they'll know whether they feel good or feel bad, depending upon whether they win or they lose the case.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What we have is the attitude of that is right now, we're not in court. Right now,
Yeah.
we're not in court.
We're not waiting for the result of
We're
anything.
not
We're not
waiting for the
seeking.
results of that trial. We do not, right now, I'm not having to present my argument to the judge. I'm not in front of the judge in court in reality, but I'm in front of the judge in my own mind thinking about that court case. And so I'm run and run and run
Yeah.
and run about that court case, okay? I know I've been there, done that. I've been in court cases before, so I know what I'm talking about. And everybody in that court case was miserable.
I bet. Yeah. I mean, yeah, everybody's just like, I mean, I'm sure everybody's going crazy in court. I mean, there's just so many things going on. Like everybody's just waiting on the judge to declare the result. And that's like
Yeah.
how my mind works, like a lot of the times.
Right. That
Uh,
in fact we wind up being in court in our
yeah, it's
own
like,
mind. That's that critical mindset.
yeah, like maybe like once I toss out that bad feeling, everything will be okay, or something
Hmm.
like that.
And so back to the step 4 of anapanasati, which is part of this body, is let's relax. The job
Hmm.
has been done, or right now is not the time to be in court.
Hmm.
Why should I be in court when nobody else is in court? Court's not in session right now.
Hmm.
That's the
Yeah.
way to start to think about it is we're not in court right now.
And so we have the tasks and the objects. That's what we're doing. We're not in court. We're not like involved in the world or worrying
Not
about
in the world,
tomorrow.
right? Right. We can do it tomorrow. I like that song that's coming from Annie, the musical. The
Hmm.
sun will come out tomorrow. The
Yeah.
sun will come out tomorrow. Why worry about today, or why worry about all of the problems when everything's going to be okay?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like the task is the breath, or like whatever the object is. That's the task. We're successful in that. We're doing that. We're not involved in whatever's not the object. The
Right. In fact, we set the work down. The
We set
work
the
that
work
I
down. Yeah.
we set the work down, and I just set it down. I don't have to do anything right now. I don't
Hmm.
have to. And when I say set it down, in that regard, the lawyer right now does not have to think about the case.
Hmm.
He's already thought it through a dozen times, no more. He's done it. He knows what he's going to say to the judge finally. And what he's thinking about right now, he may not even say to the judge. So why have to think about it right now? I can put that case down.
Yeah.
And when I do put it down, now all of the work that needed to be done has been done. What work did I put down? I put down thinking about that case. I just set the case aside.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what we're looking for. Can you keep putting things that you're actually not doing right now aside?
Hmm.
Another example would be the carpenter who is designing say, some lattice work that he's going to put into a hotel or something like that. While he's actually doing the lattice work, that's the work. But in the evening time, when he puts his tools down and walks away from that lattice work, why does he keep thinking about that lattice work?
Hmm.
Right? It's
Why does he keep?
time to put it down and be here now.
Yeah, exactly. Um, it's yeah, I guess like so if I'm sitting there and I don't know, maybe something pops up in my head, like I don't know, maybe that court case pops up or something, and I start thinking about going to court the next day.
Hmm.
Um, then yeah, I'm not going to be focused at. I'm not going to be like being able to observe the breath. Like I guess we've talked about the slideshow before. It's like more of the slides are dedicated to the court than the breath. That's kind of out of balance.
It's out of
So
balance.
it's like that
Exactly. Because,
intention
hmm
to have the breath as the sole thing occupying the slides or the
um,
object. And
let us say, yes, that's true, but the frame that I would use would be the frame of reference that we're substituting something wholesome and happening right now
yeah,
with something that's unwholesome and is really not happening right now. That
yeah.
is actually, in a way, it's delusional
Hmm.
for the guy to think about being in the court and thinking about talking to the judge, where in fact the judge is not here.
Hmm.
This is not court. We're sitting on the porch. We're not sitting in court.
Okay, yeah.
All right. And in fact, if you think of it like that, never mind the life of a judge because that's something different. But let's talk about it in the sense of the lawyer. Your average lawyer spends very little time of his day in court.
He's in his office doing paperwork or
Where's
making phone
right?
calls.
But they spend an awful lot of mental time thinking about being in court.
Yeah. So I think I missed something there that you're kind of pointing out. It's like, where are you at right now?
Hmm.
Right? So, and I think the Satipatthana Sutta says that, like, situation, like knowing the situation, Like no, like whether it's walking, standing, sitting.
Exactly. What is happening right now?
If we're not in
What are
court,
your
set it aside.
The fact is you're not in court.
Yeah.
Therefore you can set court aside.
Mm-hmm.
Court is not here. What is real right now? What is real? This body is real. Here it is.
Yeah.
What is real? The feelings that we have about court is
Mm-hmm.
right here when we're thinking about court. The court
Yeah.
is not here, but the feelings about court are right here. Okay. The next one is what is right here is the thinking mind. That mind that's burning. What is it burning? It's burning court.
Mm-hmm.
And the object of the mind then is the clouds of the mind. This is the smoke of the spent fuel of thinking about the court. In other words, our thoughts, our thoughts, our thoughts, our thoughts. But under those thoughts is this boiling pot of the mind that's concocting all of this stuff.
Boiling pot that's concocting, like kind of the fuel for the fire.
The fuel for the fire of the thoughts is the burning mind. The mind
Mm-hmm.
is hot.
Yeah.
And it's thinking about the court, thinking about what am I going to say to the judge. And in a way, these are unwholesome thoughts because they're painful.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that a work in progress is not a job done. It's not finished yet. It's cooking, right? And so it's this cooking process that we're constantly cooking and cooking and cooking. That's why the mind is considered the fire, is because we're constantly cooking things. When in
Yeah,
fact
like
we don't need to be cooking all the time.
yeah, it's like there's a fire my mind is making, and it's like I can't take my eyes off of it.
Mm-hmm. And when we recognize through sati and through wakefulness, wait a minute, I don't have to think about that now. I do
Mm.
not have to have that fire cooking the court right now.
Yeah.
That I can set that aside. Job well done is the setting aside of the undone work.
Mm.
That's the job that needs to be done, is to put down the work.
Mm. Yeah,
That's
like
the
everything's
hard part
burning, like
of
you
it.
said. It's like there was what the fire Sutta. I forget the name of it, but yeah, I think it was like the fire Sutta. I
Mm-hmm.
was reading through the other day. It's like everything's on fire, and like as soon as you can be bored of that and not want to be like glued to it, then you can let go of it. Was kind of what I got out of it, but I don't know.
Exactly. So you can see now, then, that's why the Satipatthana, which then is the all encompassing of the elements,
Mm-hmm.
the fire element, which is the mind, the cooking mind.
So
We
that's the
have the
same fire
air.
element.
It's the same fire element, okay? And that the thoughts then are the smoke and the clouds that are put off by the fire, the cooking fire.
Mm.
That's the thought process that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's constantly in motion, constantly changing.
Mm, yeah.
Okay. Every time it changes, you can think of that as what we call a mind moment. Things just keep happening over and over and over and over and over again, just because if you see any kind of log fire, you can see that things are crackling and popping and burning, and uh, flames shoot up and flames shoot down, and smoke is billowing constantly. And
Yeah.
that's what we are. We're on fire.
Yeah.
And the
Everything's
product
on
of our
fire.
fire are thoughts.
Mm.
And when we recognize, oh no, those thoughts, in fact, and all of that fire is in a way consuming me. So we wind up with all of these feelings that are, let us say, heated up to the point of boiling.
Mm. Yeah.
And so these are all of the elements that we have. We have the body, we have the feelings, we have the mind, and then we have the production of the mind, the clouds or the smoke that is there. This is the Satipatthana, and this is exactly the way that we want to practice Anapanasati, is to work directly with these elements.
Mm. Okay.
Okay, and so Satipatthana Sutta has 4 elements, and Anapanasati breaks down into those 4 elements and has 4 different aspects for each element, giving rise to the 16 steps of Anapanasati, except that they're not really steps.
They're not steps, it's just approaches that you can apply
Right,
to the situation.
exactly. So with the body, we have in the Anapanasati Sutta the long breath, the short breath, the experience of the body, and the be here now with all the touching and the sitting and all of the experience that we have. And right here on the porch, there's a lot of breeze going on. There's just constantly the air around is in motion, but I can feel all of that with the body when I'm paying attention to it. And when I'm not paying attention to it, I'm missing out on so much that's happening because we're thinking about things or in the head rather than in the present moment with the body.
Yeah.
Now, also part of the body is not just the sensory input from the touch or from the deep proprioceptic, but also part of the body. The body is like a huge antenna. And that with the ears, we pick up sounds. With the eyes, we pick up sights. With the odors, with the air, we pick up odors and smells and whatnot like that. And a lot of it comes in and is not properly processed because we're not paying any attention to it.
Yeah.
An example of that, in fact, the one that's the most humorous of all, is that a guy's walking down the street and he's being approached from behind by a robber. Now, we can be approached from behind because city streets, there's people all over the place. But when the robber comes up with his attention, for some reason, the hair on the back of the neck will stand up. And yet, if he's not aware of that, then he's going to get mugged. But if he's aware that, wait a minute, something's going on here, let me pay attention to what's happening, he's more than likely not going to get mugged.
Sure, yeah, they can look around and
okay. That's just right. So it's talking about then situational awareness comes through the body.
Yeah, you want to know where the fires are at, kind of, right? Like you want to know where the smoke is at, like what's going out of control, and that
In
awareness
a way,
comes
yeah.
through the body. Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, in a way, yes. What we're actually meaning is that part of the waking up process. The exact example you've heard before is to wake up and smell the coffee. You've heard that? Okay. What that means is to wake up to become alert. And now the coffee, the smell of the coffee is a sensory input. That when you were sleeping, you didn't have that sensory input. So waking up and smelling the coffee, another way we can say is wake up and see what's happening. Or another one is to wake up and hear what's going on. Okay, so the wake up process is basically to come out of our dream-like state that's in the mind and come into the reality of the sensory input of what's happening on the outside through the body. Okay?
Yeah.
Because most of the feelings that we have on the inside are associated with the fire that's burning in the mind. And when the mind has stopped burning and it's in sensory input, then we're okay.
So if we go back to the elements, okay, so like a lot of times, fire, I guess, would be in charge. Like my mind's going out of control, and I'm really focused on that. But like, if I take a couple of deep breaths, and notice the air element, would it be wrong to say that's more like outward facing? Like I'm more paying attention to the sensory inputs coming in, and then maybe like water would be like kind of the internal feelings, and then
it's almost like a catch-22 or a paradox in the sense of the spiritual life. Is it really going inside or is it going outside?
That's fair, yeah.
Because in some respects we can talk about, yes, it's actually going inside because we're no longer paying attention to the cultural world of the humans. and that we're going inside in the sense of looking at what's really going on within our own mind rather than being concerned about what's in the mind of all of the people in our society.
Well, I
So
guess like
that's one way of looking at it.
to rephrase that a little bit, like, yeah, like I guess those elements pervade all through your awareness, right? Like so if I was like focusing on the air element, then maybe that would like pervade my awareness or my attention, and like I'd feel I don't know, spaciousness or like the breeze. But those I guess I was just trying to say, like, those feelings seem more associated with like outward facing senses, like, you know, this feeling on my skin of like the air hitting it, or like, you know, sounds coming in, like my body's not really reacting to it. It's just kind of like letting things process. Is that unfair? Like that the air element's kind of the.
Okay, well, let's look at that then from that,
I'm sorry,
that
that's a sidetrack. We
context.
don't have to.
All right, so the air element then is in the Pali, we would call it the Dhamma Nupassana, as opposed to the Kaya Nupassana, which is the body, the Vedana Nupassana, which is the feelings, the Chitta Nupassana, which is the mind, the Dhamma Nupassana. Now we can actually pay attention to the actual physical air on the outside in the sense of the touch of the skin, the body. We live in a soup, and the soup that we live in is the actual physical air, the physical element.
Okay.
But we're talking about it in the sense of a Dhamma element inside the mind is what is in the content of the mind.
What is in the content of the mind? Okay.
What is the content of the mind? We recognize it is actually quite airy-fairy. That this thought comes and that thought comes, this breeze goes, and here's this smoke, and here's this cloud, and it just comes and goes and comes and goes back and forth like that. This is a way of looking at it, and in fact, in the Anapanasati Sutta, it actually mentions it in the sense of anicca. But normally what we do is we get attached to the features of our thoughts, like, for instance, thinking about court. But the reality of it is that that when we're thinking about court, it's jumping around all over the place. That is very airy-fairy. It really will have an instant thought of the judge in his robes. We'll have an instant thought of the courtroom itself. We'll have an instant thought of what my preparation is, and it just bounces all over the place, bouncing back and forth. This is why they call it the monkey mind.
Yeah, it's like transitioning between these different phases. Yeah, okay.
And what we need to do as an observer, as a practitioner of Anapanasati, is look at that jumping and jumping and jumping.
Okay, so
why
like,
is it jumping? Is because it's never quite satisfied with the thought that it's on, which means that the monkey is jumping from one hot stove to another hot stove, and he never finds rest.
Okay, I've been thinking about that wrong, because, like, you know, I guess most of the we talked about is look at the breath, and I just noticed when you look at the breath, you know, it feels a little more airy. But like, I'm not forcing that. Like, I'm kind of just observing that airiness. Like, so maybe if I had a different object, you know, there'd be fire or earth or something like that. And so our job is just kind of look at the transitions, like notice how the mind's working. Well, not job, but I guess we're putting down the work. But just,
we begin to see how the mind is working, and the fact that it constantly is moving from object to object to object because it's dissatisfied with every one of them. We're critical of every place that the mind lands.
Okay, so yeah, like if I took a deep breath and noticed that fire element is present, or like my mind's really burning up right now, it would be hindrance almost to just say like, oh, I wish there was more air quality present, and then try to move it that direction. That's not what we're doing.
Well, you can think of it that way. All right.
Okay.
If that's useful and valuable for you, you can think of it that way. But basically, let's talk about it in the way that the Buddha talks about it. Is what is the condition of the mind?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just trying to explain my misconception. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, let's look at the condition of the mind.
Right. What is the condition of the mind? Is it sharp and focused? Is it dull? Are we filled with the hindrance of torpor? Is it sleepy? Is it tired? Is it drowsy? Is it sharp? Is it
Mm,
focused? Is this the best it has ever been? Or is this in between?
mm. Yeah.
In other words, is the mind exalted right now? Is it really on top of the show?
Yeah,
Is
and
it
we're
really on
aiming.
top of everything? Or do we feel like that we're buried under a bunch of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the state of the mind, which you could also say is the state of the fire of the mind. In the sense of have I put too much wood on this fire?
Mhm.
Okay. Like the court cases, you keep piling stuff on and piling stuff on and piling stuff on, and even the mind becomes overwhelmed when we keep piling stuff on. But it always has the quality of being dissatisfied. How can we change those thoughts then to be nurturing, wholesome thoughts so that the mind becomes satisfied? In other words, we're thinking about now how to actually cool the fire off.
Mhm.
Okay. And how we cool it off is by robbing it of its fuel. What is the fuel that is burning? Is these unwholesome thoughts that
Yeah.
gives rise to that stinky, smelly smoke.
The thoughts. Okay. It's not the
Okay.
attention.
That's the sati, to keep waking up. And to keep waking up and making sure that in this moment we're putting good fuel on the fire of the mind
Yeah. Okay.
rather than putting unwholesome, dirty fuel.
Hmm.
Okay, because a fire can burn with refuge or it can burn with twigs.
Yeah,
A
like if you're
twig,
having a lot of bad, yeah, if you're like constantly thinking about the court case, it's what you're going to be continue thinking about. Like if you keep
and
stoking
it's
that
going to be
fire.
very smoky, very hot, but not burning well.
Yeah,
Okay,
be
so we can
cloudy.
think
Yeah,
of it like that. So that the fire element of the mind then is we want it to be well and properly fueled.
yeah, we're waking up and we're seeing what's present. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, we're like
What is
noticing.
actually useful, valuable, beneficial, and wholesome kind of mental states or mental fire versus heavy, burdened, uh, uh, difficult thoughts. Thoughts of, and then in fact, the Buddha talks about it in Sutta number 19 in the regard that's very classical Buddhist and therefore difficult for Western people to understand. But the three that he has is thoughts of greed, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of harm.
Yeah,
Uh, uh, and so, what we're now wanting to do is not have thoughts of harm. So, if we have thoughts about, oh, that's a really tough judge, or in another case, the guy who I'm suing, he really did me wrong.
hmm,
Okay, those are the kind of thoughts then that are unwholesome.
yeah,
That he did me wrong. And I'm going to go to take him to court. I'm going to do him some wrong too. Okay, so thoughts of harming things, thoughts of I'm going to get even, thoughts of revenge, thoughts of, but there's another kind of thought that is, say, that's harmful in that way, is just the monkey mind jumping from thing to thing to thing and never landing in a place that's comfortable, is always moving from one hot object to another to another. The
yeah,
monkey mind is like that, and we become unsettled in that way.
yeah. It's not
Okay.
resting like you're, yeah,
And so when we change the practice then from that ordinary mind state to where we're critical of everything, then we can begin to tell ourselves this is what that stage of gladdening the mind that's so powerful and so important from the teaching of the Buddha is to start telling ourselves, hey, wait a minute, I can put that fire down right now. I don't have to feed that fuel. I
yeah,
don't have to be critical. I can be nurturing instead. That's the remark that the Buddha made when he's under the bo tree. Aha, I see you, Mara. I see that fire. I
yeah,
see the fuel I'm putting on it. Let's not do that. Aha, I see you, Myra, means that now I'm going to change those unwholesome thoughts into wholesome thoughts, including thoughts that are not being harmful, but whether they're thoughts of healing,
Okay.
thoughts of putting a almost mental salve. An example of that would be like a mosquito bite. That if that mosquito bites and it got a whelp and it itches, the unconscious mind wants to scratch it.
Yeah.
And so you can see when people are talking to each other, and one will be doing this and scratching and all kinds of stuff like that, but they're doing it absent-mindedly, or they're doing it with a different part of the mind. And the part of the mind that they're doing it with, the scratching, is the part of the mind that does not like the itch. And so we
Not
scratch it.
like the itch. Yeah.
Okay, so that's exactly then what's going on inside the mind. The monkey mind is scratching at an itch, but
Okay.
we're
So yeah,
doing
like
it ignorantly.
so an example would be like maybe um, something happens at work and it makes me anxious, and then if I close my eye or like if I'm paying attention, um, yeah, you can see that your mind wants to focus on that, and so we'd want to like if we remove the fire, like if we can like kind of
We're trying to scratch it.
yeah, we're trying to
But,
scratch it, so we want to like not scratch it. Um,
well, there's more to it than that.
we want to
And that
also
is that
add
we recognize,
fabrications.
well, when we recognize that scratching actually disturbs that mosquito bite, or that the scratching of the thought about what happened at work actually is making it worse.
Yeah, so I guess like my approach for that has been like, oh, there's anxiety there. Like, not a big deal. Like, I can just
Okay,
return back
all
to the
right.
breath, and then it kind of like it doesn't stoke it, and it kind of settles, and I get more relaxed, and it kind of passes, and like maybe I'll think about the smile on my face or something. We can replace
Yeah,
it with something wholesome, like, or as soon when
yeah,
we let go of it, then something else can take its place. It's not so much that,
exactly. Because this dirty, stinky, smelly smoke does not have to be there the next moment. The next moment, by changing the fuel, now the smoke that we're putting off is pleasant perfume.
yeah,
Doesn't have to be the stinky stuff. Okay,
yeah.
so
Then my mind's not, yeah, jumping back to it.
exactly. Now, here's a way of finishing that metaphor with the itch of the mosquito bite, that in fact, with mindfulness and knowing what I'm doing, I can take this is what we have here in Thailand. It's actually a little container that we open, and it's got a bomb in it.
Yeah.
And we take that bomb and we put it on that mosquito bite, and we love it. And we rub that nourishment in, saying, this mosquito bite is not going to be an issue. I've got just the right product for it.
Yeah. So
Okay.
if we
So
have
now we're
these,
nurturing it. We're caring for it. We're nurturing it. We're medicating it.
okay,
All right. So this is how we want to treat the mind also.
would we do that
Is
with like the building blocks we were talking about earlier? Like
no,
emphasize.
no,
Oh,
no. This is
okay,
in the
sorry.
sense of changing the kind of thoughts from um, unwholesome, harmful thoughts, the scratching, into nurturing thoughts of caring for it.
Hmm.
Like, for instance, when the lawyer's thinking about the court case, he can say, oh, well, never mind. We don't have to go to court until next week. I'll be really prepared quite well right now. I can just relax.
Hmm.
I can sit at home and read the newspaper or whatever, and actually read the newspaper. But many lawyers are going to sit at home trying to read the newspaper, and they keep thinking about that court case they've got coming up.
Yeah.
So the mind keeps burning and smoldering and whatnot over that court case, and he can't enjoy the moment.
We want to add good fuel to the fire. We want to give it something else to do.
We want to give it good fuel for
Good
the
fuel.
fire.
Yeah.
The good fuel for the fire is like the medication that I just showed you, the balm for the mosquito bite. That for us would be wholesome thoughts. Oh,
Wholesome
never
thoughts.
mind the court. Never mind the court. Never
Okay.
mind. Start again. Let's come back and let's just enjoy sitting here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's enjoy the breath. Let's enjoy this moment. Let's enjoy the body and all of the sensory input that's coming into the body right here, right now. Let's relax. The job is done. We don't have to think about the court case right now.
It'd be more of like a I am relaxed though, right? Like it'd be a
Wow, this is nice. I'm so relaxed. Exactly
yeah.
is the way to do it. Not I should relax, because I should relax is more critical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Going
not
from
like
one
ooh,
place.
like let's. It's not like I need to move this direction. It's like I'm relaxed. Like we extinguish the
Ah,
fire, like or we put out the dirty fire, then we like
mm-hmm.
let a
Right.
more wholesome fire build. My
Uh,
metaphors are getting really stretched, but yeah,
right. So that movement, I got it.
yeah, and
Hmm.
that's like well, yeah, it's instant. It's not like
It's
moving. Like
instant,
it's there.
exactly. That sati is just like, I got it.
Yeah, yeah.
Happens in one mind moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that as we progress in our practice, that becomes an instant change of attitude
Mm-hmm.
from, I've got all of this work to do, I've got this court case to do, in the sense of, never mind, I
Yeah,
don't have
that makes
anything to
sense.
do. Then we have thoughts like, everything is really good. I've had so many court cases. I'm a successful lawyer. Everything is all right. Everything is fine. I'm
Yeah,
good to go. This moment is wonderful. The job that I needed to do was to stop thinking about the court case.
stop thinking about the court case. Yeah.
That's the only work that we have to do, is to put that work down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can put the work down and then like it goes back kind of the unremitting thing you were talking about.
Well, the unremitting mindfulness means that at any time that we catch ourselves doing work, we put it down.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we
every time
notice
we catch
whenever we're
ourselves
back on
being
that
out,
court
we just
case.
put it down. We just keep
Yeah.
putting it down. I'm already good. I've already done what I need to do. I don't need to do anything right now.
Yeah.
And so we come into a state of really comfort and ease, because every time we can think of something to do, we remind ourselves, hey, I don't have to do that now.
Yeah. So like I guess what are the elements that we were talking about had to do with our process of, waking up, not stoking these unwholesome fires and building wholesome, like in
Mhm.
like cultivating wholesome or like adding wholesome
Right.
things.
Now,
Yeah.
in the very beginning, we begin to, for the beginner, let us say that thought is almost always verbal dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that you're talking to yourself, but there's also an audience in there that's listening to yourself talk. These two states would be, in Burned and Freudian language, would be the parent and the child, or the superego and the id.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the superego is what Freud called, um, the the all of the learned behavior, everything that you're taught. In other words, Daddy felt that way, therefore I feel that way too, because I learned how to feel in that certain situation from my dad. And so Daddy knows how to feel. He knows how to slam the door and drive the car fast away when he's angry at Mom.
Dang, that's spooky. I never thought about like the words. I'm listening to them in my head. For some reason, I never thought like, yeah, I'm like listening to this thing in my head, like berate me. It's like there's an audience for those words. I'd never thought of that like
Yeah.
framing. That's really interesting.
Yes, and the audience is the child ego state, the one who feels.
Yeah.
Okay, so we actually go around hurting our own feelings constantly with criticism. Oh, I did wrong there, and we do it in the sense of, well, what would they have thought about me? An example of that would be like I would be on the internet and I'm talking to a student and we're having a really good time. And then an hour later, I think about what I said and I said, wow, I bet a whole lot of people on the internet, when they hear that video, are going to be really angry at me because I said something stupid, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? We don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. I need to see the thought that I'm having right now of, I bet things people will think I'm stupid. I'm calling myself stupid right then.
Hmm.
hmm And so I have the bad feelings about it. I don't have to ever listen to any criticism or comments from YouTube because I'm already doing all the criticism and all the bad feelings in advance.
Yeah.
Okay. But when I catch that, I can say, wait a minute, I don't care what people say. I can feel good right now. I don't have to go over that in order to make myself feel bad.
Yeah. That's
I can stop being critical of myself and just enjoy my life. That you're already okay.
yeah. So we could wake up and see that the thought, like see the thought and like not stoke it anymore, and then replace it with like a better thought. That seem for whatever reason, like thoughts and like sight things seem really hard to disassociate from, like kind of in the context we've been talking about.
hmm
Um, I guess that's probably because we kind of build our like personalities around them, or like at least the self-talk.
That's what a personality is. The personality is, in fact, the dialogue between the parent ego state and all the critical thoughts and the way that the child inside feels about all of this criticism that the
Mm-hmm.
parent is giving, which means it's all learned behavior. We
Mm-hmm.
learn how to be critical of ourselves, and then we learn how to respond to that criticism.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, I guess like kind of what you're saying too is like the order is mind, thought, like self-talk, received by the hearing like child, and then
hmm
bad feelings.
hmm Right. So,
It's not like the feelings are ourselves. It's not like there's this other audience that's receiving that and then being like, oh, I feel bad.
hmm
Okay.
let's use this example. The example is that mom goes into the kitchen and she sees that the trash needs to be taken out. So she calls her teenage son and says, "Take the trash out."
Mm-hmm.
Well, he does take the trash out. He does what he's told to do, but it's hard work. He resents it. Oh, mom, do I have to? Now let's take the position of now the teenage son on his own, without any prompting from mom at all, walks into the kitchen and sees what a mess it is, possibly a mess that he had previously caused himself. And so he says, well, this needs to be cleaned up. And so he takes that trash out, but now him taking it out is a lot easier to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now let's analyze that a little bit. The first time he was told to do it by mommy, critical. Mom is critical. He's in the child ego state. Mom says, you go take out the trash. And little Johnny says, okay, I'll do it, but I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that I'll do it, but I don't like it is the way every child approaches every homework assignment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
From
I'll
personal
do it.
experience, I can vouch for that.
I'll do it, but I don't like it. Now let's look at it from the position of he goes into the kitchen himself and sees that trash and says, "Wow, I'd be better off without this
Mm-hmm.
stuff out." Okay,
That's
so now
enjoyable.
let's take this.
Yeah.
hmm
Oh.
Let's take this from the outside example of a real mom with a real teenager in a real kitchen with real trash, and talk about it mentally. So that now we have a set of rules, and the rule says you need to go take out the trash.
Mm-hmm.
And so the child inside says, okay, I'll take out the trash, but I won't like it. This is the way that a lot of people will do meditation, in the sense of, oh, you should not have unwholesome thoughts. All right, I'll get rid of the unwholesome thoughts, but I'll do it unwholesomely.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the new way of doing it is with the adult, or changing that critical mind parent into a nurturing parent. And now we can go in, we can say, wow, wouldn't it be a whole lot better off if I didn't have to think about that? And the answer is, yeah, let me go take that trash out and then we can be okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now we're looking at it from a different perspective is, are we being critical using a set of rules? Or are we being nurturing looking at the way things really are?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So this is how we begin to operate with Anapanasati is when we wake up in this mind moment, we're going to start giving it better fuel.
Okay.
Instead of scratching it, we're going to give it a bomb. Instead of criticizing ourselves and saying, oh, you should take out the trash. It's very bad to have all of this trash in the mind. Why don't you get rid of this trash? Okay, I'll get rid of the trash. You're right. I've got to do it. Instead, we have the attitude, aha, I see that trash. Out it goes. Wow, I'm so much better off without it.
Okay. And so, like, the things we want to give it, the positive things, those are wholesome things. Would those be the factors like rest or like satisfaction and things like that? Or is that not a good way of looking at
Well,
it?
within the context of Anapanasati, what we're actually talking about is the fire of the mind. We're changing the fuel.
Okay.
We're
So we're
changing the
swapping
fuel
out the
from
fuel, and that's going to
unwholesome
be
fuel.
dependent on the like mind activity. So if it's thought, then maybe that's replacing it with good
Mhm.
thoughts. That's something we could
Good,
work with.
wholesome thoughts.
Like
Exactly.
like it'd be great to just get this trash out, like and like it'll make this area look way better.
Hmm.
And then you can take it out, and then you can feel good that you took it out.
Exactly. This is why we talk about it, gladdening the mind. Now, gladdening the mind is step 10 of Anapanasati, but if you look at it in the context of 4 by 4 by 4 by 4, we can say 1, 2, 3, 4 is the body, 5, 6, 7, 8 is the feelings, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are the mind, 13, 14, 15, and 16 then is the mind's objects
Okay.
or the air. Okay, so the fire itself is the fire of the mind. What's the state? What's the condition of the fire? What kind of fuel is the fire burning? Okay, because what we want to do is eliminate all of the unwholesome or the heavy smoke that's coming out so that our fire is burning brightly. This is what we mean by the mind is now free.
Okay.
And
The
so
mind
that
is
would
now
be
free.
step.
Yeah.
So that's step 11 is to free the mind. And then step 12 is samadhi mind. And what we mean by that is now it's organized. A lot of people think of that step meaning, oh, now the mind is really concentrated and really focused.
Hmm.
But another way of looking at it is that it's really focused, except that now it's focused on anything that comes.
Sure. So we're looking at the mind's objects, and one way of looking at the mind's objects is through like the elements, like fire, air, earth, and water. And
Hmm.
we could say like the fire, we could observe and say like, oh, the fire element is present really here, and there's you could also notice that there's a lot of clouds in the sky, there's a lot of dirty smoke, and then you
Hmm.
could use that information to well, like wake up, not stoke that fire,
And not stoke
apply
that fire.
some
Exactly.
thoughts, like, yeah, put some wholesomeness in there. Well, I guess gladdening the mind kind of comes before that, but like you can, well, not before that, because it's not a
Well, the
sequence
gladdening of the
exactly, but
mind is, in fact, the decisional quality of actually changing the fuel
okay, yeah, we're
or
changing the
stop
fuel.
stoking the
Yeah,
fire.
okay. Yeah, so that makes sense. So yeah, we can like we can get an accurate read of the situation. We can know what, ingredient needs to be added, or like what what thoughts, like what could help us feel better. Yeah.
That's exactly what we need then. In that reference, it would be step 9 of Anapanasati is take a look at what's going on. That's the investigation. What's the state of mind that we're in? Is it a smoldering fire that's full of smoke and foul smell and all of that kind of stuff? Or are we going to put in better fuel for that fire?
Yeah,
or
we can put in better
stoking
fuel.
the fire altogether.
And so thoughts are a good example, because like that's something that happens a lot, like this negative self-talk and stuff. But I guess like there's other types of like sensations and whatnot that you could also apply that to, like what, I don't know, touch, like mental touch, or like mental, I don't know, whatever the other site, mental like image, or like mental things. These are other like things we could add other wholesome things, not just thought, but thought is also one thing that we could do, depending on the situation.
I use a very, very broad definition of the word thought.
Okay, I'm probably just being too specific.
One kind of thought would be the kind of thought that has verbal components, of a verbal kind of thought, perhaps a dialogue. Something like, while I'm sitting here watching YouTube, the verbal thought comes, I should be meditating.
Yeah, that's just kind of like the mental work and the ways that it expresses itself, not just the talk.
It's just right. But there's another way of thinking that is, in fact, the language of the child ego state. It's the parent that thinks in thought. The child thinks in a language called feeling. And so when we're feeling something, that may be mixed with verbal thought, but it's the thought of the feeling, mainly the feeling of not liking, and so I feel depressed, like
aversion, or
or anxiety, or anger, or fear, or any of those kind of things is the expression of the child. That's the way the child thinks.
So we can think about like we can have a wholesome expression thought.
Maybe a way of looking at it is to talk about the reptilian brain.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything that an alligator can do, that you can do, you do with the same part of the brain that the alligator does it with. Now, one of the things that we are pretty sure about alligators is, never mind Dr. Seuss and magic, alligators don't talk, which means the part of the brain that we have that is the reptilian brain, that is identical in scope and features to the reptilian brain that an alligator has. The alligator does an awful lot of communication. It just doesn't do it with words.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So we also have a whole thought pattern system going on that is nonverbal. And the communication system is the communication of feeling. So if we have critical thoughts in the sense of verbal thoughts of criticism, like, well, what if a whole lot of people hate what you just said? That would be a critical thought that's in words. The child inside is now going to dialogue or have the response, which is a thought of feeling bad, feeling terrified, feeling pressure, feeling, oh no, something bad's going to happen. But that's a feeling, not a verbal language word kind of thought, but it's certainly a thought.
Yeah. So like pressure, that so like maybe if I'm feeling anxious, I'd feel like pressure in my chest or something like that. And so I could wake up, notice the pressure, put out the fire, then think no pressure, like no tightness. And then that would be one way of introducing wholesomeness there. Like
yes, it would. Hmm.
Yeah.
You have heard me say this before. Let's now put that in the context of you spent so many years talking yourself into feeling bad. Now is time to talk yourself into feeling good.
Yeah.
Now let's break that down into the language that we're talking about now, in the sense of the critical parent has been giving critical language kind of thoughts, thinking those, and then the child on the inside then responds to those thoughts, verbal thoughts of criticism, with anxious feelings on the inside. And
Yeah.
so the child responds to the verbal dialogue that's critical by feeling bad. By, oh, yeah, I've got to go take out the trash. I'll do it, but it's going to be a lot of work and I don't like doing it.
Yeah, like the child is hurt by that feeling, like even if it's
Hmm.
not a verbal thought, like maybe if it's like a yeah, like that pressure, like a pressure thought or something like that, then the
Hmm.
child's like reacting and be like aversion, like I don't want that, like get me away from that.
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
yeah.
All right. So when we wake up, which is actually now the adult in the room, wakes up, we now can let us even be in a happy kind of way. We're going to put pressure on the parent ego state or the verbal part to say, no, we're now going to have nurturing verbal speech.
Hmm.
Now the parent is going to be nurturing
Yeah.
to the child inside. And so now that we're nurturing that child on the inside, we're putting balm on that mosquito bite of the mind, that it begins to feel better
Yeah. There's
by
like no
nurturing. So now
yeah.
we're talking ourselves into feeling good.
Hmm.
This is how it works. And so uh, can we watch this dialogue that's going on between the parent and the child, which could, in the Buddhist language, or in fact in the Satipatthana that we're talking about, is that when the chitta, or when the fire burns correctly with right fuel, then there is no stench. And the stench is, in fact, what the child responds to.
The
But when
stench
the
is what the
when
child, yeah.
Yeah,
The
but
feeling, or
when
not the
it's
feelings, the
nurturing,
yeah.
exactly, when it's nurturing, then now the child is satisfied
Mm.
with that fire that the
We can look
mind
at
is
the
burning.
response, and that's kind of a good indicator of
Hmm.
what's happening. Yeah.
Right. So this is how, and when the child then feels good, then the body itself is going to relax. And
Hmm.
so you can see the interplay in there, that we can, in fact, the mind, if we're putting good fuel in it, then the feelings will respond to that good fuel.
Yeah.
And then the body will respond to the feelings.
And
But
that's what
also,
yeah.
there's certain kind of feelings that we have that affect the mind. For instance, if you can get someone angry just before some kind of contest, then you can take an advantage. That's one of the reasons why, WWE, the World Federation of Wrestling.
Yeah.
Okay. Before the fight, what do they do? They
They talk
yell
to
and
each
they
other. Yeah, they yell at
scream and
each
they
other.
tell how bad the other guy is. Now, because this is all fake, it's not real. He's actually saying all of those terrible, detrimental things about his opponent to work up the audience.
Hmm.
But in reality, we would say all those detrimental things about our opponent to work up the opponent,
Yeah.
because we want him to be angry and frustrated and not able to think straight.
Sure. Yeah.
This is exactly what happened in 1972 World Championship of Chess with Bobby Fischer and Boris Spassky. Is that Bobby Fischer was not as good a chess player as Boris Spassky, but he played psychological games on him to get Boris Spassky frustrated, and because of that, Bobby Fischer was able to win that contest. But this is also in debates. No ad hominem attacks, which means you cannot attack your opponent. You can only attack his position. Why
Hmm.
is that? Because if you can get somebody frustrated and angry, he can't think straight.
Yeah, they'll be like at a reduced capacity. Their mind will be focused on the bad
Because of
words.
the
Like,
bad, smelly
yeah,
fuel that we put into his mind. And so now his mind is smoldering with bad, smelly fuel, and he's not on top of his game.
yeah, it's like you're cutting off access to like all the chess knowledge because like too busy looking at the other stuff.
So now we can see that if we can talk our opponent into being angry and uptight, then a lot of the feelings of his body will go into being uptight also. And so
Yeah,
we can see that everything affects each other.
yeah.
Unlike the elements, natural elements that, like argon, for instance, doesn't get affected by much of anything
Hmm.
because it's stable. It's got just enough valence electrons that it's happy.
So
To
if
where,
like,
so some things have excess electrons and some things have too many electrons, and that's why they bond together in
mhm,
molecules.
okay,
All right. So we think about it that way too, is that, all right, um, we think of criticism in the sense of not enough or too many.
hmm,
And so we want to go out to combine with others that have just the right amount so that we can now our oxygen and their hydrogen can come water and water stable, right? So that's what we can look at is that okay, the noble mind then is like argon who has all he needs. He's nurtured and sufficient and
like
therefore doesn't.
it's kind of like what's we can look at that child, like see what it's doing. Is it running away from things that are painful? Is it,
Mhm.
getting drawn towards like the
Things that he
senses?
likes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, like is it going towards these things, or is it just sitting there resting and happy?
Or is he just sitting there resting and happy? That's what we're looking at, is to come out of our criticism. And the criticism, either I like it and I want it, or I don't like it and have to get rid of it, or I'm not sure whether I like it or not.
Yeah, the
But
three
wise feelings are
tanha.
the
Or
feelings of everything is really okay. Everything
yeah,
is fine. And it took me a long time to figure out that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, when he's talking about four kinds of feelings, the
what's
four
the
kinds of feelings are I like it, I don't like it, I'm not sure whether I like it or not, and those are all critical thoughts. The fourth kind of thought is the nurturing kind of thought of, well, everything is okay, no
hmm.
problem.
Yeah.
I don't have to figure out whether I like it or not.
When we're at that level, like it goes back to the dependent origination you're talking about, because that's where like tanha or like craving meets point of contact, right?
Exactly. I'm
Or around
thinking
there. Sorry, I might have got
exactly
the
about Paticca Samuppada, and I'm thinking about it here at the point of contact. At the point of contact is when feelings arise. They either
yeah.
arise as I like it, a critical thought, or it arises as I don't like it, another critical thought. That's really critical. And then the thought of I'm not sure whether I like it or not, which is trying to make it critical.
Hmm.
Okay, and
Yeah.
that's the thought of confusion, which leads to doubt, sometimes worry, sometimes fear. And you can see it in politics when they say, better the devil you know than the devil you don't,
Hmm.
right? Fear of the unknown, okay? And so that's why I don't know whether I like it or not, is that it's unknown. All three of these are critical. And normally, that third kind of thought that we have, the thought of, I'm not sure whether I like it or not, almost always goes into, well, I should not like it because it might be dangerous.
Yeah.
This is why people will attack a stranger thinking that they're an enemy, because it's better to strike an enemy than it is to invite the enemy in to be friends, and then he takes advantage.
Yeah, they could hurt you. So Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like we can look at, you know, what's our internal state like? Are we getting pulled towards something, or like, are those those three feelings there? Or sorry, I'm maybe not feelings, but like are we?
Yeah.
Do we not like it? Do we like it?
Okay.
Or are we not sure
We're
about
trying to
it?
figure out. We're not sure,
Trying
and
to
we're trying
figure
to
out.
figure out, do I like it or not like it?
But if
Those
there's
three
the
kind of
fourth one,
feelings are all critical and they're all painful.
yeah,
The fourth kind of feeling, wise feeling, is everything's okay. Everything is hunky dory. I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to figure out whether I like it or not. It's all right.
yeah. And so with the Satipatthana, like there's a lot about knowing where you're at, so we can like put these fires out. And there's tools, and there's like it's a toolkit. So like
Mhm.
you have the four elements. We could look at it through that lens, I guess. That could help us
Exactly.
figure out where the fires are. Maybe we could look at repulsion. That could help us
Hmm.
figure out where these like uh, what the child is having difficulty with, and kind of rambling, but like these are ways that we can assess our internal state and figure out what fires to put out, and like what to
Yes.
replace it with.
Yes, exactly. So the waking up, or the sati part of the patana, is that we wake up the body. We wake it up by watching the breath. We wake it up by noticing what we're doing with our hands. We wake it up by watching the postures, etc., like that. This is how we
Yeah.
wake up the body, with the understanding that we will, number one, know it and know its tensions and whatever, so that number four item, we can relax the body and become relaxed.
Hmm.
Notice the tension in order to let it go. So that's the body component, but we actually have that same process going on with each of the satipattanas, each of the items, in the
Yeah.
sense of, um, with the feelings now, instead of having bad feelings, and I'm meaning bad feelings like anger, frustration, anxiety, sadness, grief, fear, those are the feelings. Within the Anapanasati Sutta, it is much more focused on the very, very positive feelings that we can have that will come through the nurturing. And that
Okay.
is a sense of well being, a sense that everything is okay, a sense that things are safe, that I'm satisfied, that I'm content. And these are the feelings that we are actually going to foster, generate with the kind of fuel that we're going to put in the mind, is going to now be burning, not burning hot for depression and anger and sadness and fear. Now it's going to be a cool fire that's going to result in the feeling of okay, the feeling of ease, the feeling of success.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we can use that Anapanasati Sutta. That shows us the product, like the
Mm.
result of the Satipatthana,
Is
like
to
this sort
get the
of
feel, to
practice.
get the child feeling comfortable, so
Yeah, it
that we can
describes the
actually
happy child,
enjoy
and
our
then
life. Uh-huh.
yeah, and this is the other one's like, how do you know what the child's up to? How do you know what's going on? Um, okay, yeah,
Yeah. Well, the answer to that is, look at what you're saying to the child, and you can figure out how the child feels. If you're
yeah,
being
exactly.
critical of the child, he's feeling bad. He may do what you're telling him to do. He may be able to hide his bad feelings, but if you're criticizing the child, he's going to feel bad. If you're
Yeah, look at the
nurturing
point
the
of
child,
contact. Like,
he's going to feel good.
yeah,
And so, this is where that key ingredient that's missing in so many practices of meditation is that feeling of well being that is manufactured through the process of gladdening the mind, of
yeah,
putting the right fuel on that fire.
mm. Yeah, wonderful. That's yeah. I mean, all this is very helpful.
Great. Well, we've been at it now nearly an hour and a half. Let's finish now,
Yeah,
and you can go put this into practice, in the sense of being mindful to put in the correct kind of fuel.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to have my sticky notes on my chair. I forgot to tell you. That's been going really well to remind me to wake up.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember we talking about that. Yeah, a sticky note.
Yeah, that's been super helpful. Sorry. I just saw it there out of the corner of my eye.
Okay, Clint. Well, let's finish up now, and we'll
Yeah.
see you in a few.
Yeah,
few
thank you very
days.
much. Have a good evening.
You too. Well,